Today we're making cinnamon raisin bread, of course with sourdough starter. I'm using the King Arthur recipe, and here are the ingredients. 3 cups of flour into my Cuisinart. 5 tablespoons of softened butter. 2 generous tablespoons of sugar. The recipe only calls for 1 tablespoon, but I really like it with 2. Now, the recipe uses 2 eggs, but we're just going to be using 1 egg for now and 1 egg for later. We also have 2/3 of a cup of lukewarm water. I like to put my egg into the water so that all of the liquids go in at once. I'm going to be setting aside the extra egg to put on the inside of the bread after the first rise when we add the toppings. Now, my favorite part, my sourdough starter. I'm going to use my dough hook for it and add the sourdough yeast all around. And you'll notice I'm doing this all in my Cuisinart. I find that the kneading of the Cuisinart really just works perfectly. That's kind of all there is to it. Let's put the cover on. Let's shoot the warm water and the egg right down. Pulse it, pulse it, pulse it, pulse it. And now, let's let the machine do the kneading. See you in a moment. Now, I'm going to add an envelope of Fleischmann's fast-acting yeast. I like to add it after I put in the liquids, just because it goes into a warm matrix. And that's all. Let's take a look to see if this is needed to our satisfaction. I kind of think it needs a little bit more. If you see, it's got texture and it's holding together and pulling from the sides of the kneading process, but it's still a little lumpy. It doesn't have that elastic silkiness that I'd like. So I'm going to put it back on and give it about another 3 minutes. See you soon. So it's been in the Cuisinart for about 6-7 minutes, and let's take a look. You can see it's completely pulled from the sides, and look at the silkiness. No lumps, no bumps, just gorgeous. I should have mentioned that you don't use the knife blade when you're putting it in on knead. You use the soft-sided plastic blade. And that's really all there is to it. Look how gorgeous. You put 2 fingers in, that's how you know it's risen for the first time. Those fingerprints will stay. I'm going to gather. Now, the dough has proofed, and I'm going to turn it out onto a slightly floured board. Get it all. Let it rest just for a moment. And we're going to roll it out. Put a little bit of flour on that part, put a little bit of flour on my rolling pin. I'm going to roll it to the edges of this mat, and then a little bit more. What we want is a nice rectangle so that we can put some egg wash on it, and then we will put a sprinkle of a cinnamon sugar mixture. Then we'll sprinkle it with raisins, roll it up, and let it in for its second rise. The dough is just about rolled out, slightly larger than my rolling mat. You see, I've placed the board on a towel to keep it from moving. Rub the rolling pin with a tiny bit of flour. And you've got this wonderful dough. You can see how lively the yeast is because as you roll it, it's still bubbling and it's nice and warm from the proofing oven. So this is pretty much what it looks like. Now I'm going to crack the egg. Scramble it around and paint it onto the dough. It's okay if some of it dribbles. You don't want it to be soggy. You just want it to be a little bit of glue that will hold the layers together and also will help the butter and the raisins stay in place. Here we go. Nice quick egg wash. Now, the cinnamon and sugar mixture is 2 tablespoons of flour, 2 very generous tablespoons of sugar, and about 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. I usually mix up a jar in those proportions so that I always have it on hand because this is my go-to bread bake. The recipe calls for 1/2 cup of raisins. I usually put a full little bowl of raisins out because whoever's coming through the kitchen seems to eat half of them no matter what. There you go. Nice sprinkle of raisins. These will find their way into the center of the dough. What fun is that, right? Now, here's the part that I really like. I like to start and do a tight roll. And it's got to wind up to be big enough to fit in this pan. This is a bread pan, and I have this handy King Arthur pan liner. I find this, they call it a bread lifter, but it's a bread pan liner. You can make one of these from parchment paper and it works just as well. I kind of like the silicone one because it's easy, it stays clean, you can use it over and over, and it's just the right size. So I'm starting from the wider end. And I'm going to be trying to gather this and make it a nice tight roll. You know, and there's nothing worse than getting a piece of cinnamon bread and you don't have a raisin in it, you don't have any cinnamon. So let's just squish this down nice and tight so that when you do finally slice this loaf of bread, it's going to have that wonderful cinnamon swirl. Made her a little bit wide this time, but we're going to squish it together. And I've done probably about 4 very tight wraps. Now squeezing it down, filling the loaf into the pan. I'm saving the egg wash because I am going to put an egg wash on it before I bake it. Let's cover her up and put her back into the oven for a second proofing. This one will be about an hour and 15 minutes. Well, here is the bread done with proofing. I'm going to give it a quick egg wash and a sprinkle of turbinado sugar. I'm going to pop it in the oven for 15 minutes, then I'm going to check it and turn it to make sure that it's not browning badly. And I'm going to, let's start this whole thing. Well, here's the loaf. It proofed for the second time for close to 2 hours. I told you the kitchen was a little chilly, even though it was in the proofing oven. It just took a little while for it to come up to speed. So I brushed the loaf with the egg wash that was left over from the inside. I'm sprinkling some turbinado sugar on it, and we're going to bake it at 350 for a total of about 45-50 minutes. And I'm going to check it after 15 minutes to make sure it's browning nicely. And then we'll just let it go until it's done. I'll be back soon. And here it is. Just look at this beautiful bread. And watch how easy it is to take it out of the pan. Let me move the hot pan out of the way. And look at this exquisite bread. Can you hear the hollowness? That's how you know it's done. Look how beautifully the bottom is cooked. Now I'm going to remove the silicone mat and let this cool. And we have cinnamon bread for the week. Enjoy.